All right, got people joining in. Welcome. All right, let's see here. I have a link to a survey while you are waiting. If you wouldn't mind, if you have time, multitasking before we officially start here in a few minutes. And I'll drop that a few times, and it's actually also on my main slide, which I can share momentarily. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hopefully you can see my screen. I think. Thumbs up, see my screen? Can you see it yet? No.
Not yet, no.
Okay, give me one more. Okay, now should be, maybe. Hopefully it's the Immerse Students and Learning one.
That's the one.
All right, perfect. So give it another, let's see, minute or two. So if you just joined, on the screen on the top left there are two bit.lys, and it's easy for me to remember because it has my last name, which is Poth, and the topic, most of which is, well, it's actually three things. It's AR, VR, AI, but I've just kept it with the AR, VR, and it also has AI in it. So that first link is to a pretty lengthy Google document that has resources, some of which that I will be sharing, and a lot of other things that I won't get to, but that you might be interested in. And so it makes it easier. It's more condensed than you having and seeing Rachelle's probably 150 or so slides that are in this Google slide presentation and clogging up your Google Drive. So that's the first one, and I'll have that shared throughout as well. And if you miss it, I will be happy to type it into the chat because, like I said, it's easy for me to remember. The second one is to a survey that, if you don't mind, that's the one with the AR, VR 2. I like to know who's in the room, and granted, we're a smaller group, but other people might join in. Of course, I could do that. Other people might join in later or after the fact. And so being able to access that, like, I would still love the feedback and also your ideas, what kind of things you're looking for. So the one with the number 2 is the bit.ly to the survey. And I just asked some basic questions just to get an idea of, what your role is, what types of things you might be using when it comes to the AR, the VR, and the AI as a topic, of course, as well. The second one, the first one is to a Google document. So I don't share the slides because there are so many slides. And honestly, what I have found that works really well is when you have access to a document that I can then continue to update and add more links to, that you can see everything that I'm talking about and more. I have some screenshots in there, some articles, everything that you need. It just makes it easier. And honestly, everything that's in the slides is information that is in that document. It's just a much more condensed version. So thank you to everybody who is joining in today. I'm excited to be here with you. And if you just popped in, the links on the screen, the top left goes to a document that has many resources, not all of which I'll be covering in our 50 minutes here today. And the second one is to a survey that I'm looking at in real time, just to get an idea of who's in the room, what kind of questions you might have, what things you might be using when it comes to augmented virtual reality, also with artificial intelligence. I know we could spend a ton of time. My favorite topic, these are my favorite topics to present on. also social emotional learning. But when it comes to AI in particular, which is where I'll start here today, that has been a topic that I've really enjoyed learning about, writing about, presenting on over probably the last 4 or so years now. And I also teach about it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in, because not a ton of time, and I want to make sure that you get some new ideas, but just a brief overview of who I am. My name is Rachelle Dené Poth, and I would love to connect with you on Twitter, on Instagram. It's rdené915. It's easy because it's first initial, middle name, and happens to be my birth date. Goes way back with email. If you want to send me an email, just add the Gmail to that. I also have a blog site and share some ideas. They're always looking for some guest blogs. So if you do have a blog that you would like to share, please send it my way. Just put the www and the .com around it. I am a full-time Spanish and STEAM teacher. I'm also a consultant and an attorney, and stay connected in a lot of different educator networks. I'm also ISTE certified. So I love learning, and I love learning from other educators. But the thing that really got me excited about learning, besides being a kid in school, was working with my students over a series of years that really pushed me and challenged me to take some chances in my classroom. And I used to say, I'm just a Spanish teacher and I can't do some of these things in my classroom, like, wow, how would it fit? Because I'm teaching Spanish. But I learned to get rid of that word just and focus on what are some things that I can bring into my classroom for all of my students, whether it's in my Spanish classroom, whether it's in my STEAM course, which is on emerging technology. So we cover lots of things. We definitely start with digital citizenship, but we also look at AI and augmented virtual reality and all of the different realities. We do coding. We do a lot of things with robotics, STEM activities, and even more, emerging things like NFTs, blockchain, metaverse, you name it. We cover all of it in that class. So I love learning, and my whole motivation is if I can make it easier for other educators to get started in their classrooms, then that's exactly what I want to do. So again, feel free to reach out to me with questions, ideas, share questions and resources you're using in the chat. And I have my survey here. So thank you so much for doing the survey. I can drop that link in throughout as well. I just dropped it in there again. And just to give me an idea, because if I know, hey, you know what, we're all elementary educators or tech coaches or administrators, then I can pinpoint specific ideas for you. I also know your familiarity with something, so I can spend more or less time based on that and make it really meaningful and relevant for what you actually need. Of course, knowing that I won't fit everything in during this time, which is why I like using the survey, so I can kind of navigate that and skip through some things. So the first thing is just to say that even though I am a Spanish teacher, I focus on, as we all do, standards. And I have language standards, but I also focus on the ISTE standards in my classroom, actually in all of my classes, because I do know that students need more than just the content of Spanish that I'm teaching them. And so these are just a few of the ones that I focus on when talking about augmented virtual reality and creating opportunities for students to explore and create and not just consume using these different options that we have available to us. So anybody who is an ISTE member, we have a lot of standards that we can focus on. And so I chose to just highlight a few of those here as a starting point. So a question that I get, and in some of the videos that I have here, I am purposefully playing them just in the background, just as kind of like conversation starter or curiosity, but taking you through a little bit of the process of what I do in my own classroom with my students. And the first thing, and I'll ask you some participation. So if you wouldn't mind typing into the chat, when you hear artificial intelligence or AI, what comes to mind first? Like somebody says, could you give me an example of AI? Or I wonder what AI is all about. If something pops into your mind, you want to share it in the chat. I'm always curious to know what some of the first things are that people tend to think of when it comes to AI. With my students, this is exactly how I start. I ask them, what do you think about? And sometimes they hesitate a little bit, but usually I get some of the same answers, especially recently. A lot of the students are talking about the ChatGPT. Usually it's Alexa, it's Siri. When I'm in a conference in person, there's always somebody that yells out Terminator or the movie I, Robot. And a couple of years ago, actually probably 5 years ago now, I believe, is when I really started to learn about AI. And that was for a blog for Writing for Getting Smart. when I wanted to kind of challenge myself to do something different in my classroom and learn and write. And so I wrote this blog that I have linked in that document about, AI and how much we see of it, and we're using it and interacting with it in our daily lives, and not even necessarily knowing that. But I did share that those were some of the first things that I thought about. So with my students, and if you're looking for ideas to get started, and I know, and thank you again for the survey, I'm looking, comfort level for using AI tools is on the lower end. You're all rating yourselves like lower, like the ones and twos. And for me, when I dove in, I think that's the best advice I can offer is with any of these things, I can tell you, matter of fact, you do not have to be an expert. I am not an expert. I have, more knowledge than I did years ago, but there's still so much more to learn. I don't know that I will ever be an expert in any one of these things, because as we've seen, especially in the last couple of months, the changes that are happening in the world when it comes to AI, and especially with ChatGPT, and some of these other technologies that we'll cover here, it's so fast, and we have so many things to keep up with. So the best advice I can give is to just have a starting point. Start with a conversation like I did with you. Hey, what is artificial intelligence? The video that was playing in the background, I use that. There's tons of videos that are out there that I use in my classroom with my students. And for you, I just have it playing just so you see some different things. And be like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about artificial intelligence being in, whatever was in the background playing. But there are a lot of videos that I have linked in that document with my resources. The next thing we do is we dive into actual definitions and think, okay, what is AI? What are the benefits? What is machine learning, for example? And I won't take the time to read these definitions to you. And many of you are probably more familiar with what these are now than you were a few months ago, because of all of the information that's coming out all over the place. I even had written, I first wrote a blog about ChatGPT back in December, but I wrote a blog about GPT 3 years ago, actually, for the first time. And back then, I co-wrote that with Tom Vander Ark. I was amazed at what it was capable of. And I thought, are you serious with this? This is unreal what you can do with this. And now we have ChatGPT and people are testing it out. And so it's changing so quickly. And so I did just have another blog come out last Friday that I had written, I think about 4.5 weeks ago. And I had to update it from the time I wrote it to when it was published, because the GPT-4 was predicted to not be available for, testing out until the summer. And they got that ready really quickly. So with my students, just like with you, I go through the process of, okay, what is it? Let's talk about it. Give me some examples. And then we look at definitions and we think about, what kind of things can you compare it with? And I'll just pick the neural network and I'll compare that to our brain. So if I say to you, okay, I'm going to name 4 objects, I want you to pick out which one of those things is not like the other. So our brain, and I won't take the time to do that, but that's just an example that I use in my class. We think through, we analyze, and sometimes there is a definitive answer. And sometimes when I do this with my students, they have different answers because they classify things in different ways. So the brain, the neural network, is how our brain works. It goes and it sorts through and it learns what things are by going through all of this different data. If you've ever used a Google AI experiment, I'm actually curious about this, and I'll get to this a little bit later, but has anybody in here done or used Quick Draw? If you have, type in a Y, just out of curiosity. Or if you've done something, even if you've not done Quick Draw, use Quick Draw for the AI, things like win, lose, or draw, Pictionary, those type. As somebody's drawing something, our brains are sorting through oh, they're drawing a square. So we're eliminating everything that's not a square, or, to kind of figure out what the answer is. So AI is able to go through and sort through and process all this information. A good example would be looking at a Google search. Anybody that remembers going to the library, doing research, looking at books, Dewey Decimal System, sitting down, sorting through all of that. And at the end, you're like, I got nothing. Now you can do the Google search and you have millions, billions of results within less than a second. Now, does that produce the content for you? No, but it brings in all of this information from all around the world, all different types of content really fast. And if you had a human do that, it would take, I'm not sure how long that would take, but it would be a really long time. So these are just some of the things that I talk about with my students are, what is it? Where do you see it? And there's a great video series, and some of you may have heard of this, and it's Crash Course. Has a lot of different videos, not just specific to artificial intelligence, for example, in this case, but for other content areas. But what I like about this is, let's say, and I'm looking at the survey as well, if you're looking for ideas and you feel like, I don't know where to begin, I teach elementary school, I'm working with teachers, I'm an administrator, just like, not that I'm the expert, but this is the path that I've taken, and I continue to tweak it every single year, especially because things change so quickly. But having those pieces of content and things that are already available to use as a starting point for discussion. So here's the video, there's a Terminator in the background, but Crash Course has a series where it goes from very basic, like you see in this video playing, which I know you can't hear, but it's linked in my document. But you can go through and say, what is artificial intelligence? Okay, what is machine learning? What is a neural network? What is deep learning? And it goes through all of these different, from beginning to advanced concepts about AI. And so as a teacher, you can just learn with your students, preview the video ahead of time, know enough, to get them started, but then you get them on the path and then let them take the lead with the learning. And so that's why I say, like, I'm not the expert. I mean, I love talking about AI. It is my favorite. I love doing professional development sessions and things like that, and having conversations with other educators and definitely my students. But I just started with some of the basics, like what was already out there that I could use, because I know as educators, we do not have a ton of time. So if you are looking at this from an elementary teacher perspective, if you are an ed tech coach, you are IT, whatever your role is, think about, who are your learners? Who are the people that you want to learn about these concepts? And it doesn't matter if you teach third grade or if you're a Spanish teacher like me. There are tons of resources that are out there that are not only just specific to AI, but can tie in some of the other areas that we are trying to focus on. Like, I want to bring STEM into my classroom. I want to focus on social emotional learning. And so in my class, we use this AI as a topic, and we do a lot of different activities throughout the course of the year. So I show the video. This is one of our favorites. And then we have a discussion. But as you can kind of see, they have some different ones at the bottom where it's like natural language processing, neural networks, and all of those different topics that make up or are components of artificial intelligence, so that my students, and we spend about in the year-long course where I have 2 groups, 3 days for each group, we spend probably a third of the year focused on AI. Lots of different activities that we do, some of which I'm teaching them about and showing and explaining, some where they're exploring on their own, and some that we're going through some things. And I see some of the comments in here about, bias and ethics, and those things do come into our conversations because they are very important. And for my students, I actually had some students in the 8th grade who said, I wish we had a course that was solely focused on talking about ethics and bias and these issues that can come in whenever you're looking at artificial intelligence, primarily things like facial recognition. So what I like to do is I create a space for that to happen. And it doesn't mean that I'm lecturing them the whole time, even though right now I'm talking to you all. It's just a starting point. And through that, over the last couple of years, I've learned a lot more. And so it's not just that I'm the sole giver, it's like we're learning together. And that's what I love the most about it. So another thing that I like to share with educators and with students is, some students will say, for example, we've been working on coding in the last couple of weeks. And some of my students are afraid to try to code because they think that they won't be good at it. Some of my students say that they don't like the fact that they're good at it. And they're curious about how all this is going to come into play. Why are we learning about these things? What does this mean for the future? And these are 7 trends that I pulled, and I should have these linked in my document, but if not, I'll make sure that they're there. But the number one skill in demand, coding, STEM related fields, those are in demand and they're increasing. But artificial intelligence and having skills in this area is the number one skill in demand. And so for my students who are now in 8th grade, when I think back, and you may think back to when you were in 8th grade, don't know the age group of everybody in here, but I can say that things are really different from the time that I was in the 8th grade. But making predictions about the future. Okay, look at what my experience was. Okay, now look at all these years later, what you have available to you. Like, you want to unlock your phone, it just scans your face. There are places where scan your face and you've paid for something. The voice recognition, all of these different things that are changing and how quickly they're changing. It's humans that are creating the programs that are being used for, cybersecurity and all of these things that are listed here, these trends. People need the skills to design these products, these technologies. And so humans, us, we have to have the skills, and we have to give students in our classrooms as educators opportunities to build those skills and to learn, like, are they interested in it? Like, do they have a skill in that area? And to spark curiosity. So if you have just recently joined in, on the bottom right of the screen now, I've shifted it. I need to change that number, but the first link is to a document that has a lot of resources. The second one, if you just change that number 1 to a 2, actually I have to change, let me put that one back in here. I'll just paste it, makes it easier because I did totally change it. I just realized. That'll take you to a survey that I have. So on this screen, here's an activity that I would like for you to do, if you would not mind, and share. Give yourself a point for every one of those 10 that are listed on the screen that on an almost everyday basis that you use. And it doesn't have to be like 7 out of 7 days a week, but just, on a regular basis, if you were to give yourself a point for each one of those, what would your score be? And if you don't mind sharing and typing it into the chat, that would be awesome. But if you just kind of want to keep that to yourself, but that's okay too. But I have, in all the years that I've been doing sessions similar to this, sometimes I do a 3-hour workshop just on artificial intelligence. And so we have more time to really dive into this topic, and also the same with AR/VR. But I've had very few people who reach a 10. More so that are getting 9s as opposed to a couple of years ago. But for me, up until November of 2020, I was hovering nicely at a 7. But then Netflix seemed to be, that was the perfect time, November 2020. Also, the facial recognition, I don't use that on my phone, and I don't have smart home devices, but I have been an 8 for the last couple of years. But if you think about this, and nobody's sharing their numbers, but that's okay. I had a student, hey, thank you, an 8. All right, there we go, adding them up. And the commuting could also be using things like Uber Eats. But I had a student who in the 9th grade had an 8. And I was trying to figure out like which ones he didn't have. And I guess the commuting, and he actually had. And I said, what do you mean? He used Uber Eats. And I live in Pittsburgh, and I thought, well, I hope you got something good for that Uber Eats, because living in Pittsburgh, there's lots of choices. If you're a 9th grader and you have access to that, go for it. He got McDonald's, one that he happens to walk past on his way home from football practice to get to his house. So I said, you could have like literally just walked in the drive-thru, just walked up and ordered it, but it was the convenience factor. And so when we have these conversations, we look at things like, what is it? Where do we see it? What are the benefits? Does it help? Are there concerns? We're looking at privacy and the ethics and the bias and all of that, especially when it comes to, like some of you mentioned earlier, the Chat GPT. But I think it's a fun activity to do, and also one that brings awareness to like, oh, you know what? I didn't realize that artificial intelligence is involved in this, or machine learning is involved in something that I'm using every single day. And oh yeah, it does make it nice when you go onto Netflix or you go to Amazon and you're thinking, gosh, there's millions of books out there. I have no idea what book I want to use. And then it recommends it for you. People that bought books similar to you bought these books, or based on what you've viewed, previously, here's some recommendations. You're like, thank you. That's fantastic. Banking and fraud detection. You buy something that's like out of your area, you get that notification if you have that set up, and it's like, you know what? I did buy that $10, whatever the thing was, even though it was billed through California. It was me. It does help. Now, as I'm moving through this quickly, because we still got to get to the AR/VR, and looking at the survey, there is a high interest in some things, focus on the AI in particular, especially in light of the last couple of months. So that's why I'm kind of trying to balance it out. But when it comes to it, like I said, starting with a question, having some discussion, having some videos, some activities, just like I did with you with that list of 10, and sparking the conversation. And then in my class, we look at some of the different types. And now chatbots, we know ChatGPT, which is the generative pre-trained transformer. That means it's been fed with massive amounts of data, depending on how you want to say it. I like to do that. But when it comes to chatbots, it's conversational. It has natural language processing, the NLP, which simulates the conversations that sometimes make you feel like you are actually talking to a human. but that's because of the way that it's been programmed. Now, how can you use this in education? Well, a friend of mine a couple of years ago had made a chatbot. She was a library media specialist and was then shifted to work between 3 buildings. And people would go into the library and had questions, some common questions, but there was nobody there to answer them. So she had made a sign, but nobody read the sign. And so she had created this very basic chatbot, but it answered some of those most common questions. So if somebody walked up to the desk, they could type in the question and it would generate the answer. These are things that you can do with students. There's lots of resources out there, which I'll share with you and are in the document, that students can not just, interact with these chatbots, but they can actually create them depending on the age of your students. Now, personal assistants, those things we mentioned, those Alexas and so forth, those are also programmed. They have the natural language processing to be conversational with you. The ChatGPT chatbot, there's lots of things that you can do out there. Translators, anybody who is a language educator knows, for me, it's like, oh my gosh, I know you use the translator on this. And this with the ChatGPT is another challenge, because as a language educator, my students, if they can use it, even if it's blocked at school, it's not going to stop them from using it at home. They can type in the prompt and they can have it write it for them in any language instantly, whatever the prompt is. But will I know? Yeah, I probably will, because a level 1 student that turns in something that's very advanced grammar, it's going to stick out. It has stuck out to me for years, and translation capabilities have been around since the 90s. I took a course, so it goes way back. But looking at, some of these technologies, even to translate, if for work purposes, people may not have experience with a language and they're sent somewhere for work, and they have to use these tools that have these functionalities that enable them to facilitate conversations. And so they are beneficial. Some of my students who in my STEAM class were not super excited, or I get very excited about this augmented virtual reality and the AI. They said, oh, we know all of this. And I went, what do you mean you know all of this? And they give some examples. I said, there is way more than that. But over the years, I've had some students that no matter what I tried, just couldn't connect with. Like I varied all of the different activities, and this may resonate with you as well, but it wasn't until, and this was probably 7 months into the school year, everything I tried in this STEAM class, it was like one student, just nothing. And I was really trying. I just so happened to be walking around the library and I glanced down at the floor because something caught my attention, and it was the book Ready Player One. And if you've read it, I super nostalgic when I read that book, and I saw the book cover, and I had recently read the book, and I went, oh my gosh, whose book is this? And it was this student's. And that started a conversation that then led into about, video games and how AI has been used in video games to enhance that experience. And I told him the date. He's like, are you serious? I thought this was something new. And from that point on, there was a connection between me and that student. It took 7 months. But that was in the 8th grade. And that was a way we continued. And he graduated this past year. And he says, how long are you going to talk about that? I said, it's a great lesson about like creating opportunities and the interest, and tying in what your interests are, which you like video games, you're reading this book. And here's technology that we're learning about in that relevance. And so making it, engaging for students and authentic and meaningful. Sometimes like you never know when it's going to spark that curiosity and that interest in the students. And so I really like sharing that story, but also just looking at some of these technologies. So this is a long list. There are a couple of things I'm going to show you quickly because I know time dwindles, but in my document, I have links to all of these. And that's another reason I just share that document, because you can go down and you can see like, hey, you know what? I want K through 12 curriculum. I want free resources. I want to take a look and not have to go and sort through all of the things out there on the internet and have it streamlined. I have those in that space for you. So the only thing that I will say, I will show you a couple of these really quickly, but some of the ones that are not listed on here, but that are, and I'm going to skip that. Well, actually, let me go back to this one real quick, that are not listed in here, like AI 4K12, for example. David Turetsky from Carnegie Mellon here in Pittsburgh has this massive website with tons of resources. AI for All, like the number 4, that's also linked in the document, has slides, Google slide presentations and lessons that are focused on ethics and bias. And it has everything that you need to get started. The only thing, honestly, that you need to do is just to go through it to familiarize yourself with what the content is and if you want to add anything to it. but it has, everything is available, Creative Commons. So you can use it in your classroom. It has videos embedded, discussion questions, and it was phenomenal. And so that's the nice thing about all of these topics is they can seem like, oh my gosh, there's so much to know and I don't have enough time. But take it from somebody who just dove in at first, like you don't need a ton of time. You just need a few ideas to start, and don't feel overwhelmed because there's so much out there, but just find one or two things. And if you're looking at, access to resources, especially when we do the AR, VR, and, funding is a challenge. So maybe you use things like stations. I have some things that I may not get to in our session, but there are some free trials of some things like a humanoid robot called Marty. And hopefully I'll get to show you the little glimpse of him, but you can sign up to try some of these things as well. But a couple quick things in the chat, type in a no or yes, either one, if you have tried ChatGPT. I'm just curious. A yes or a no for ChatGPT. Okay, so lots of yeses. All right. And you can, like, it is, you sit down and you think of a prompt and then another one. And it's like, I didn't want, the first time I did this back in December, I think I spent 3 hours on a Saturday night, Saturday night, just thinking of all of these things. And a couple of the first ones were questions that I would ask my students, projects, prompts that I would give them for discussion in Spanish. And I had to generate, and I could not believe how fast it did that. Then I started to do things like post for social media. I asked it to write lesson plans. I thought of things that my friends had asked about, or things that were time consuming for educators, and not even just educators. We're looking at like people that work in business, journalists, anybody that creates content. You can use this. Now, is it always correct? No. So media literacy, digital literacy, we want our students to, a great reference letter. That's nice. I actually did use it to test out a couple of letters for businesses. Just as an attorney, I was curious to see like what the wording would be like. And it is fun to do that. Administrators, I had a question, how do you get administrators to try this? And I said, well, what about the newsletters that you write? Not that you want to take that human component out, because that's the authentic piece and I value authenticity. But when we're looking at saving time, as a teacher, saving time where like, okay, I used it to spark some ideas for myself, for new ideas for my classroom, for my students, or I save time and now I have more time for my students or more time for my teachers. Oh my goodness, a year long. Wow, that is amazing. So there are tons of ways to use it. If you haven't used it, I recommend, maybe one thing you start with is ask it to write a bio about you. Now, I loved this. I was in a conversation with my advisor professor from Duquesne, where I'm getting my doctorate in instructional technology. And he said that he had asked it to write a bio about him and it couldn't come up with anything for him. And I said, oh, you know what? That's a prompt I've never tried. So as we were talking, I typed in this prompt and I was laughing when I read it to him, because I got to the second paragraph and I went, I actually don't need to be in this program because apparently I have my PhD and I'm a professor, an associate professor at this university. That's not true. I don't even know where that university is. I don't have a PhD in curriculum and instruction. I wish I did, but some of it is right. And I can tell by looking at it, like where it probably pulled the information from. Some things might be on my blog site. Something might be, somebody else wrote about me. Maybe somebody has my same name. I don't know, but you can use this in many ways. And there are some great resources out there. An educator from Massachusetts, Dr. Tori Trust, if anybody knows Tori, has created some like unreal resources for prompts that you can use, ways to use it to get students to boost critical thinking, close reading, creativity, a lot of ways. But I think completely shutting it down with the technology, that's tough too, because students need to learn about it and understand it. And so do we. And so having conversations and testing things out and understanding, what is the impact of this technology, all of these technologies, is really important. And so I know that we are at about I got the 2/3 of the way down here, and roughly 15 to 20 minutes, including some questions, but a few quick things that I'll share with you. And again, there are way more in the document. Test out the ChatGPT if you haven't, but there's AI Club, and I have links. This is good. They have K through 12 resources for AI. And I know some of the questions were like, I don't know where to go. I don't know how to use this in the classroom. So hopefully, and I know I'm talking fast, that's because one of my favorite topics to share is AI, and it's just a lot of fun to work with students on this and educators, of course. But it's, how do I get started? I don't teach one of these subject areas where I can bring this in. Quick activities that you can find. AI Club has some, let's say you're an art teacher and you want to use some generative AI and do like a style transfer, the picture that's on the top right. You upload an image, you pick a style, it creates it. My cartoon character on the bottom right is a newer one called Tunify. You upload a picture, or you can use your selfie, your webcam to take a selfie, and it'll show you what you would look like as a cartoon character. There were some apps, Lensa app. There are a lot of them that are out there. Somebody mentioned Midjourney and some of these other things that are generating. You probably see them all over social media. When I did it a couple of months ago, I had like 3 hands and I had like 7 fingers on each hand, and I was very distorted. So it wasn't perfect. Some of them were okay, but it's still neat to test out and see what that looks like, and have the conversations and have fun learning with the students as well. So AI Club is great for that option. And I'm actually going to skip through this one, so my apologies. But I did want to share this really quickly for anybody who is a tech coach, because I know we have some here in the group, or administrators, or even just educators. If you want to interact with a chatbot and you want to have your own personal coach that is an AI coach, your virtual coach, I use this at Athena a couple of months ago and at the start of the school year, and it interacts with you. And here's just some screenshots. You can record yourself in your classroom, or you could also just, like I did, sit down. Let's say you're doing a virtual training. You have a student teacher and they want to practice. It's great for that. There is a bit.ly that is in the document, and I will type it in here as well. You just basically sign up for it, and it takes you through, it sends you reminders, and it has you pick goal areas, and it gives you feedback. It has you monitor your progress and reflect on it. And then at the end, it compiles all the information that you gave it and gives you like a PDF that you can share and say, hey, this is the learning that took place. So that personalized learning, and I didn't get into too much of that, but with AI, some of these tools that we're using in our classrooms have personalized learning paths because they have AI embedded into them. So when students work on an activity, it creates their own personalized learning path based on their response time, whether they're right or wrong. And for us as teachers, we can get that information, and we can then go and work with them and give them that one-on-one feedback. They can have access to a personalized tutor anytime. That's a big topic that's coming up with ChatGPT. If students of age, because you want to read that privacy and this, like the policy that's in place for that, make sure that you read through that, because it is very interesting for all things, but read through that for sure. But being able to, get an answer to a question, or to break it down. If you say, explain photosynthesis to a 2nd grader, to a 10th grader, whatever the concept is, and just to see how it changes. But having this interaction with a chatbot, getting feedback, getting some help whenever maybe you're stuck and looking for an answer or some kind of an idea. It's just one that I like to share because it ties in nicely to the teaching and our reflection, our growth as educators, because here we are all learning here at a conference, but it's also neat to interact with the chatbot. Okay, diving into AR, VR, and this will be, quick too, because all of these sessions, are quick, but the idea and what I try to do is give you some ideas that are easy to start with. So the videos, those links, I skipped the Google AI experiments because I feel like a lot of people tend to know that, and in the survey, I had some comments about that. But Google has AI and AR and VR experiments, and you don't have to do anything. You can have students kind of navigate on that. Again, if you're looking at, I know a question is like, I don't have the access to a lot of devices. Use what you have, create some stations in your classroom, break students into group, great for that collaboration, building those SEL skills, and then they'll come up with their own questions and they'll create things. So there's lots of ways to do this that don't require a ton of time. But with augmented virtual reality, when you think of things, again, just like with the AI, I start with definitions. And for my students, they're talking about Snapchat. But for those of you here, when you hear augmented reality, if you feel like it, typing into the chat, like, what do you think of first? Like, what comes to mind when you hear AR, and I should say augmented reality, because I know for elementary teachers, there's another AR, and that caused a lot of confusion a couple of years ago with the AR, but we're talking augmented reality. So an example would be the merge cube. So if you have ever seen the merge cube, you can basically, I'm holding this, I would use my iPad, I would use my phone, and I use the app, and I could be holding the solar system. I could be dissecting a frog. I could be looking at a volcano, the layers of the earth, but I could still see everything around me. So it's here and I'm holding it, but I'm still in my real world. I'm still in my office. So that's augmented. It's a slight change. But the neat thing about it is that you can then, if I would have had this in geometry in the 9th grade, I probably would have not gotten those 2 Fs and a D for the first half of the year, because I could have interacted with it. Just sharing that. Oh yeah, Adobe. Yes. Thank you, Robin, for sharing, and everybody who's been sharing. So that's augmented. Now for students, more than just consuming, right? They can create. So they could tell a story with using augmented reality, depending on what their surroundings is. Now with VR, you're immersed in an environment. You may have the headset. I have the Quest. There are other headsets, if everybody remembers, like the Google Cardboard and those things where, you feel like you're totally in that and immersed in that environment. There is even now, you can smell, the sense of smell. So olfactory, that's kind of awesome. Wish I had more time to dive into that as well. But you would really feel immersed in that environment, right? Seeing things, experiencing things, feeling like you're there, smelling like anything around you. There are a lot of benefits to some of these tools as well. And then the mixed reality, I always think of the movie with Tom Cruise, Minority Report, where you have the glasses and it's that merging. So you see the world around you, but yet there's something else that's there. So maybe I'm a mechanic, or I'm working on a plane, or I'm in, a hospital, medical facility, and I don't have all of, the equipment. I could have the glasses on to see what I'm working on. And then the information that I need, I can see through my glasses projected onto it. So instead of needing big manuals or needing big equipment or some monitors, I have less in that space, but I can still work because things are merged. Great question. Special tech for AR. You need some type of a device, so an app. So usually on your phone, if you have an iPad, lots of different apps. One example that usually comes up, like Pokemon Go. A lot of people like to do Pokemon. With the Merge Cube, you don't necessarily need the cube, because I have linked in the document. You can, and even on your screen, if you had the app on your phone, you could actually just scan it on your computer screen and get that feel for what the augmented reality is. Usually, like I said, it is, the iPad, it's your device. Android is what my phone is. Could be a Merge Cube. You're welcome. And there are a lot that you can create with. The VR, you don't even necessarily need the headset. There is web-based VR as well. Thank you. So and I know from the survey, I almost said the chat, the survey, a lot of people know about Nearpod, but I am only just the one thing that I will say about it, and I want to move on to some of these other, like creating things that have codes. Nearpod, I do have a code in there. It's for, I think, a 60-day, but it is fantastic for starting with VR trips. So if you are thinking, I teach 3rd grade, I teach 7th, I'm working on this topic, I want to focus on digital citizenship, or I just want to take my kids on like this trip around the world, but we don't have the funding or the time right now. Nearpod is great because they have all these VR trips, tours, lessons that are already available for you to use. So for my students in Spanish, whenever they were learning about places in South America, for example, I'm like, oh, look at the video, look at the picture, look at this, black and white drawing in the book. But then they were able to hold that in their hands and look closely at it. Now, sometimes educators will say, but how do I create the wow? You don't have to create the wow. The wow is in the tool that you choose. The thing that you have to think about is, why are you using this tool? What difference is it going to make? For me, in this case, the kids were they were able to look closely at these structures, to look at these spaces and say, wow, look at the houses. And then beyond oh, that's kind of cool to look at, we're looking at social awareness. They're developing empathy. There's all of these other things that can come in. So that's why I said before, if you're thinking there's so much we have to do, I want to bring STEM, I want to focus on social emotional learning, I want to talk about the AI, the AR, VR, you can kind of cover all of those things with one topic, with one focus area, with one tool, with one method. And so I think a lot of the overwhelm that we feel as educators comes from the fact that we have like all these things. So Nearpod is one that if you have an account and you haven't used it, just go in, find a tour, upload one of the lessons. Maybe you use PowerPoint or slides in your classroom, add those in, a couple of questions, some videos, and you're off and running, and then get the kids talking. Now, the next one is CoSpaces, and based on the survey, not a lot of people have heard of CoSpaces. So I will highly recommend CoSpaces. That is CoSpaces EDU, and the links and the code that give you an upgrade are in the document that I shared with you. And again, if you have questions, need ideas, if I can help you in any way, don't hesitate to send me a message at any time. I would be happy to share all the experiences, because honestly, when I dove into these, I literally just dove into them. I tried them out on my own. I checked the privacy and made sure they were in compliance with everything, because that was number one. The age settings also, and of course I can type this back in here. I made it easy for me to remember. It's my last name, Poth, ARVR, and there are tons of things on the site. So for ARVR with using CoSpaces, what I would recommend is create your account. Maybe do it now, because now is a good time. We multitask, check out some of these things. And then they have a gallery. And in that gallery, there are lots of different examples of projects created with CoSpaces by students of varying ages. So they have some for ELA, they have some for STEM, they have some for like math, social studies, there's games. I can let the kids just go and explore first. Before anything, I just say, you know what, go check out what's there. Now, you can create the CoSpaces on a Merge Cube. So holding it in your hand. Now, for your classroom, if you're thinking, you know what, I'm teaching 6th grade right now, and we're reading this book, I'm going to have them do a book summary. They could create in CoSpaces. They can add audio. They can add characters. Characters can be animated. So it can also tie in the coding. So when I was talking about like STEM skills, and we need people that know how to code, it can be as little or as much as the students want. And these are just a few of the ideas. But the thing about it is they're understanding what the tech is. It also can be augmented and virtual reality, because if they do it on the cube, you could still see the room around you. But you can also, if you had the headset with the app, you could feel like you're immersed in that space. So it is both the AR and the VR. So you would need a headset for that, but you don't need it to actually, engage in the experience. You can look at it on the screen. But it's fun to see what the kids create when they use this. Also with CoSpaces, the kids can collaborate. So looking at digital citizenship skills, when you want students to build digital citizenship skills, social emotional learning, you want them to learn about these emerging technologies, you want them to retain the content that you're teaching. And I didn't put those in any specific order, because I want to plot them out, but all of that is important. And so my students in Spanish pushed me, and they said, why don't we get to do this cool AR/VR stuff? And I didn't have an answer. I literally was like, that. And I said, I had never thought of it. And it just so happened, CoSpaces brought this feature out, the collaboration. At the end of the year, student engagement was down. It was like, whew, all right, let's give it a go. And so I tried it. I didn't know if it would go well. I didn't know if the students would work well together, if they would follow the instructions, but I wanted it to be an interesting experience for them to create. And it was awesome. Is all I can say. Is it was absolutely awesome. And I know we only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to rapid fire through a couple of things. So Merge, here's the cube. A couple of years ago, they were going to stop creating them and updating the app. And then the Merge cubes went on sale for $1. You could even Google and find where's the nearest Merge cubes for $1 at the Walmart. But now there are lots of things available with Merge Cube. You can sign up for a free trial. There are some free activities that you can do. One of the things that I like the most about Nearpod also and Merge is it has the immersive reader. So if you're looking at accessibility, students are building their language skills. I don't teach about breeding bugs in my Spanish classroom, but I could. That's how I could bring this in to my Spanish classroom and have students look at and read the Spanish because of the immersive reader. But students can engage and use the AR and learn the layers of the earth, for example. They could create some representation like a museum using it. So it's just slightly altering between, what's in the space with you and holding it in your hands and being able to connect with that content that you're learning more closely and in an authentic way, because you are actually holding it in your hand. So that's Merge Cube. And I have 2 more to share with you, and then we will be done. But again, I'm available if you have questions. Thing. Some people had used Aurasma and HP Reveal, which were great, and then they disappeared. Thing is one that is very similar. You can use a target, a trigger image, and create whatever objects around it. You can narrate a story. Students could, again, in your classroom, if you don't have a lot of materials, 4 stations with 4 iPads, computers, and just give them a chance to explore. But if any of you were to get the app on your phone and went and scanned the cover of that Be Real book written by my friend Tara Martin, you would see what was just playing here in the background. So beginning of the school year, welcome your students into your classroom with creating something with Thing, with co-spaces, with Merge Cube. You teach science, like show yourself with the solar system in your hands, like, hey, welcome to my science class this year. There's lots of possibilities for using these different tools. Thing is a great one. There are some for active learning. And again, like I said, sometimes I do this session as like a 3-hour. I've done it as a 6-hour, but it is fast. And the technology itself, we know it's changing so quickly. And the last one that I will leave you with, which somebody also mentioned, is Mozilla Hubs. So right now we're all in the Zoom meeting. Virtual learning, you had Teams, Google Meet, all of those spaces, but you didn't really feel that connected. It wasn't like you could actually feel like somebody was talking right in your ear. But with these web-based VR spaces, you can. And so I encourage you to check out the resources that I shared in that document, because there are a lot of different ones like Mozilla Hubs. But you could create this little virtual meeting room that you decorate, that you present from, that you screen share. Instead of using Microsoft Teams, I used it with my 8th graders. They needed very little instruction other than how to get into the room. They took it and ran with it. You can have conversations. You can break into small groups. It's just really neat to explore the different options that are out there. And this would tie into like the metaverse, but that's for another day and another time, because we're out of time. And I know that is really, really quickly, or really, really fast, I should say. Yes, absolutely. And so this document, which is my last name and AR/VR, has AR, VR, AI. It has way more than what I've been able to show you in our time here together this afternoon. But I wanted you to at least have some high level ideas, and maybe to think about things like, oh yeah, you know what? I didn't realize, like, I can bring that into my 4th grade classroom. I can bring that into algebra. Absolutely. Sometimes you got to just take a little, creativity, like, wonder how I could do that. But just know there are so many resources out there that make it so you don't have to start from scratch. Go to Nearpod, go to CoSpaces, higher education. Absolutely. You can use all of these things, even especially like things like the Merge Cube will be great just to explore. Also the CoSpaces for creating something in higher education, these meeting spaces. Mozilla Hubs is just one of the many that are in that document that I shared. And so I would recommend that. But if you want to follow up and send me some, specific questions, Robin or anybody else, let me know. And also I'm going to drop in an amazing Jamie Donnelly. If you don't know Jamie, I can't believe I didn't mention her yet. She was actually in the picture earlier, but she just finished in March 31 days of AR/VR. So if you go to her site, I'll type it in the chat, and I know we're out of time, typing fast, arvrinEDU.com, then you will see Jamie's, and we often co-present, and in this bottom left picture, that was for ISTE a couple years ago, and I was the cat, and she decided to draw my face, but you felt more connected in that space. So let me know if you have questions, connect with me. I'm happy to help you in any way that I can, and thank you for joining.
Rachelle, thanks very much for being with us today, and
Of
for all of you
course.
attending, thank you very much. I did post a survey on the chat. If you would take a moment to fill out what you think, let us know how everything is going for you. Here in Colorado, it's lunchtime, so we got an hour before our next session starts, but we probably have a couple minutes if anyone has any questions for Rachelle.
Yeah. Time flies. Yeah, see, we're only on slide 86 right now, and that's and I skipped a bunch in between, but yeah, I appreciate everybody responding to the survey. Thank you so much. Gives me some new ideas and some things to look at. So I do value that. And it really is right next to me. I wasn't kidding. I got all the devices. Thank you. Have a great Lunchtime, you said, right?
Yep, here it is.
Oh, the metaverse. I had written a couple articles about metaverse and metaverse and Web3 for getting smart. So if you need some different, Victory XR, nice. There's going to be a big event at ISTE in Philly this summer where it's like 3 days. We're doing AR, VR playgrounds with all kinds of spaces. So if you get a chance to go to ISTE, definitely want to take that in. Hours upon hours of AR, VR. Hey, that's awesome, Robin. Thank you. Oh, medical school. Yes. Let me type this in. Oh, wait. Learn, roll. So that's I type right. There is a company called Learn, Roll, Immerse, and the CEO, her name is Sushmita Chatterjee. They had, and I used it a couple of years ago, and they still have it now also, but it is like an immersive where you go through, it's like anatomy, and it's a cardiovascular system. You actually like look at the parts of the heart, take it apart, interact, answer questions. So I would recommend that. But even using things like, I know Nearpod is primarily like K through 12, but they do have some content there that might be relevant. Also, if you have access to the Quest headsets, for example, and there are some different things that focus on anatomy and learning, but check Jamie Donnelly's blog site as well, because she had shared a lot of different ones. Or send me, and I'll type this in the chat too as well, send me an email to remind me, and I'll see what I can pull for you as well for the ideas for VR for medical school. Awesome. Yeah, there were even gloves. Also, there was a company, Sensory X, that had gloves. So you had the tactile kind of interacting. Also for simulations. I don't know if like Labster was one that was for physics, but there are some other ones out there that you could do kind of like the simulated environments as well. There's a ton, definitely a ton. Oh, the Athena link is not working. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me stop share. There's that. I may have typed it in incorrectly in my speed. That one should work. All right. Any other questions? Everybody's like, lunchtime.